Now it's time to talk some arbitration details for your 2025 Toronto Blue Jays.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. But for Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. As always, I'm Braden Iwasco. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5Iwasco. Carter First too as well on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. As well, if you're new here to YouTube or you're listening anywhere else, we would appreciate it if you guys wouldn't mind going and dropping a subscription on the YouTube page, as it does help us out, keeps us at the top of your guys' page. And you'll be letting know if there's any live streams, any shorts, any videos at all, anything like that. Those will be out on there as well and give you notifications. We also have a Discord link in the description if you guys want to go join that. You can talk Blue Jays with us any time of day, whenever you want. In saying that, Carter, we have a lot to get into today, as the 2025 Toronto Blue Jays arbitration details have sort of come out in the sense of, okay, what's it realistically going to look like? So we'll get into that. And then, of course, in the third segment, Carter, we also want to talk a little bit about that crazy postseason game between the Yankees and the Guardians. What an absolutely electric game. We'll get into all that more. But Carter, let's start off with arbitration talks, and let's start here. What is arbitration for those who don't know?
Yeah, so with arbitration, it's pretty much, so we'll start with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I guess we'll just have him as the example. So there's going to be a player that is not under contract right now. So with arbitration, you pretty much get rights to a player until they can reach the free agency market. So right now, the Toronto Blue Jays have rights to, for example, Vladdy, Eric Swanson, Alejandro Kirk, guys like this. So Vladdy and his team will come up with a number that he thinks he is worth for this upcoming season, and the Toronto Blue Jays will come up with a number that they think that he is worth for the upcoming season. And then it's just up to debates. Ideally, you want the team and the player to be able to come to the same contract, the same numeric value, and you want them to agree. But if they don't agree, say Vladdy is set on his ways, the team is set on his ways or on their ways, then they go to arbitration committee. So it's almost like a court in a sense. So Vladdy will advocate for himself why he thinks he is due a certain amount, and the team, unfortunately, the way it works is they kind of have to, they crap on him a little bit. They say, "Oh, Vladdy, we don't think you deserve this contract due to these stats, whatever they may be." But it's a little bit of an argument. Vladdy's advocating for himself. The team would be advocating against Vladdy. So as you could tell from just the way this is set up, it's not usually the best for relationships amongst the players and the organization. There can be a lot of feelings that negative feelings that Vladdy could hold against the Toronto Blue Jays and vice versa, and it might impact contract talks for the future. But overall, it's just a team and a player trying to decide their numeric value for the upcoming season.
Yeah, and it does get tough, right? We've seen a lot of these situations end poorly, right? And then when they go to sign their contract post-arbitration availability, the talks just don't go well, and they end up going to free agency or testing the market because they're sick of how the organization treated them. So it's a fine line that the team has to toe here to be able to keep Vlad happy, but also get the number they want. At the end of the day, I mean, it's going to be tough to argue against numbers that Vladdy gives because he was so successful this past season and has been. And I guess, Carter, let's maybe just start with Vlad and just how you feel he's been playing, and what's the number that seems to be right for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. this season.
Yeah. Before we step into that, I just want to kind of take a step back and just an example of when things haven't gone well in arbitration and what that impact can be. Outside of the organization, what classic one is Corbin Burns. The Brewers literally just dumped on Corbin Burns completely. They gave the blame to him for their lack of playoff success, which is absolutely insane. Blamed pretty much on one pitcher, said he wasn't doing enough in the playoffs. The relationship right there was pretty much, it was null. Corbin Burns did not want to stay with the Milwaukee Brewers after that arbitration case. And then you look at Bo Bichette last year. Luckily, we don't have to talk about the Bo Bichette arbitration this season because they did decide on that last season. But even he said it was a hard thing for him to undergo. A lot of the relationships are strained in those hearings. So it's anything you can do to avoid going to that arbitration hearing and get a decision made between the player and the organization is going to benefit both the player and the organization immensely in the long run. But jumping into Vladdy here, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., This guy is projected to have the highest arbitration in the MLB, and it is not even close. So they have Vladimir Guerrero Jr. for his arbitration this season projected at $29.6 million for arbitration. When we're talking about contract talks, we like initially when people were talking contracts, they were thinking Vladdy gets $30 million a year. They already have him pretty much slated at $30 million a year. Again, it's a projection. It's not concrete, but that's usually these projections are fairly accurate. You're not going to skew more than $5 million over or under. And the next closest arbitration value to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. being at 29.6 is Framber Valdez at 17.8. So there's over a $10 million gap in arbitration. That just goes to show that you don't get a player that can Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s caliber very often.
No, exactly. And when we talk about the arbitration, at the end of the day, we're going to have to say our takes on this. So I'll sort of lean into mine a little bit here. Is the fact is you're going to have to pay Vladdy probably for, an 8-10 year deal is probably what you're looking at for him anyway. And you're probably going to be paying him more than what the arbitration is set at or going to be set at. So I think you give him whatever this year. If it is the $29.6 million, you give that to him because for the next 8 years, you're probably going to be paying him $35 million a year. So at the end of the day, I think all the power is in Vlad's hands right now. This is the arbitration that leads into his next contract. This is huge for this team to lock this down and not make an enemy of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And I mean, again, at the end of the day, we'll have to wait and see how they treat him and what his feelings are post arbitration. Because, like you said, there is some guys that come out of this on the wrong end, and we know that Vlad likes being in Toronto and likes the organization, but arbitrations can ruin that. So I think for the Jays' sake here, you want to stay as far away from an arbitration as possible.
Well, just going back to last year, the way it worked out was Vladdy had himself at 19.9 million. The team had him at 18.05. Do you really want to go to an arbitration hearing over $2 million at this point with Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? Like you said, if you're going to extend this guy, it's going to be 8, 10, 12 years. You're probably going to be paying him $400, $500, $600 million a year. Are you going to strain a relationship over $2-3 million for 1 year of baseball when you're going to be paying this guy way more than you're already paying him this year anyway? I just don't see the benefit of the Toronto Blue Jays unless Vladdy's like, hey, I want $45 million in arbitration. Then maybe hold your horses a little bit there. But if it's somewhere around $30 million, I don't really think you can say too much. And there is some history to back up why I don't think Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to go too crazy off the projection with the arbitration, because the highest arbitration ever given out was Juan Soto last year, and that was at $31.5 million. That's only $2 million more than he's at right now. Is Vladdy going to be petty and kind of, or maybe he thinks he's better than Juan Soto? Again, I'm not going to say petty right away. Maybe he's going to be a guy that wants $32 million a year. And if he does want that, compared to 26.5 or 29.5, does it really sway things too much? I think you got to pay that out. You make Vladdy the highest ever arbitration gatherer of all time. But you look at other contracts as well. You had Shohei Ohtani when his arbitration was with the Los Angeles Angels, $30 million in 2023. And then the next one was Mookie Betts, 2020. He made $27 million. So they have Vladdy projected as the third highest ever arbitration contract. So again, there's a reason they're doing this. They don't give arbitration projections this high to randoms. They don't give them to the Bradley Zimmers of the world. They don't give them to the Kevin Biggios of the world. There's a reason why he's projected to get this much money. You might as well pay it now because you're going to be paying this salary it's going to be a way higher dollar value than it is in this arbitration case.
Yeah, and I think that was important for, I think as maybe not as much avid baseball fans out there, they probably don't know what this process entails and what can happen coming out of arbitration. And so that's why we thought this episode was important to make for people to, one, understand what arbitration is, and to understand the deals putting in front of these players and what the situation is. So at the end of the day, I mean, people that are going to be pissed about Vladdy asking for probably what he's worth, because like we keep talking about, he's going to get paid after this season, probably more than what the arbitration is going to get him. So at the end of the day, paying him, 31 million is probably fine in the long run. You're still getting a discount on him this year. So I think for the Toronto Blue Jays, they need to capitalize on this, make sure that he is on good terms going into next season when he will sign his long-term deal.
Well, and let's go into a little bit of an experiment here. I was trying to pull up some numbers as you were going over that. Congratulations, Canucks, first win of the year, by the way, as we're recording this podcast. So I just want to throw that out there. Obviously, me and Braden are Canucks fans. But let's go back to Juan Soto in 2023. So obviously the highest ever arbitration case at 31.5 million less last season. What did he do to deserve that? So I guess this would have been for 2023. So 162 games. He had 35 home runs, 109 RBIs. We got 129 strikeouts, 132 walks. So he's walking more than he's striking out. That's a Juan Soto stat. No, not a lot of other players are going to do that. Absolutely insane. The hitting average of 275, on base of 410, slugging of 519 for an for an OPS of 930. Let's look at Vladimir Guerrero Jr., how his season kind of compares to Juan Soto. So you're not going to get the home runs, 35 home runs for Juan Soto. You got 30 for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. You get more RBIs for Vladdy. You get a higher OPS for Vladdy. You get a higher average for Vladdy. Some of these stats, when you're comparing them, again, there's more than just the surface level stats that I gave you right now. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. could make a case with his team that he could be the highest ever arbitration case ever in the history of the MLB. So these numbers aren't too far off. So again, the way Vladdy evaluates himself, the way the team evaluates him, it's going to be tough. They're probably not going to have the same number, which is expected, but you expect them to work on that and have discussions behind closed doors before they get to the arbitration hearing to save some feelings and just save the relationship between the organization and the player.
100%. I don't think it's out of the question that he could be the highest ever arbitration. I think that's very reasonable with the stats that he just put up. He made his case. He did what he had to do. And this year he'll have to make his case for his long-term contract. And that's the process. You have to prove yourself for arbitration, and then you have to prove yourself for the big contract that you're, wanting to sign. So at the end of the day, at least the Blue Jays know this season, Vlad's going to be giving it his all to make sure he really capitalizes on that 8 to 10 to 12-year contract. So even say it's 33 million, Carter, is that too much? Is that deterring you? Like, what would be the number that's too much for Vladimir Guerrero Jr.?
I think if you get to 35, then you're like, okay, you got to take a step back, and then you maybe barter with them a little bit. But for the Blue Jays, again, like, is this $5 million really going to matter in the long run? If you want, like the team has said, they want to sign Vladimir Guerrero Jr. long-term, this season isn't really going to matter for that. Like, are you really going to let this a couple $1 million impact Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s arbitration? And this is interesting because I'm going to have a completely different stance on the other 9 players that are in arbitration for this team. It's just Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is such a specific case. There's a reason, like I've said multiple times in this podcast, that he is projected as the highest arbitration in 2025 and the 3rd highest ever. Pay out of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Don't ruin the relationship right now. Fork over the little bit of extra money right now. If you want to barter and you want to play hardball, do that with the contract. Don't do that with arbitration.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And you brought up the fact that with these other players, the stance is going to be different, and it has to be. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was above and beyond the best player this year, and it wasn't even close, to be honest with you. And when we start talking about the rest of these guys, you'll hear the stance change because, yes, some guys value themselves too high, and other guys value themselves probably pretty accurately, like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. We'll get into all that and more next. Again, keep in tune for the final segment where we go over what happened in the game yesterday between the Yankees and the Guardians. An absolutely crazy finish. Make sure you guys stay tuned for that as well. We'll take a quick break and be right back.
Today's episode is sponsored by Hims. Your sex life is important, but your schedule is busy. You don't have the time to go to a doctor's office to get treated for ED, but through Hims, you can get a personalized ED treatment without stepping foot outside your door. Hims provides an access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints, Viagra, Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. You can start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. HIMS.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products, which are not approved or verified for the safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions required on an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will, I want to redo the second part of that ad. I'm fucking stumbling here. Today's episode is sponsored by Hims. Your sex life is important, but your schedule is busy. You don't have the time to go to a doctor's office to get treated for ED. Through Hims, you can get a personalized ED treatment plan without stepping foot outside your door. Hims provides access to a large range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints, Viagra, Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/locked-on. That's HIMS.com/locked-on for your personalized ED treatment options. That's hims.com/locked-on. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products, which are not approved or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider, which will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscriptions required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
So, Carter, we talked a little bit about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and his arbitration. Now it's time to talk about some of the other players for the 2025 Toronto Blue Jays that are also could possibly go through this arbitration process. I guess let's start with the second biggest possibility for arbitration. That is Dalton Varsho. His is estimated at $7.7 million. And I guess, Carter, the question is this a reasonable number for Dalton Varsho?
Kevin Kiermaier got $10.5 million. I think he's more than reasonable for Dalton Varsho. He's going to provide you the same defense. He's probably going to be better with the bat. He's younger. I'm not mad at all about 7.7 for Dalton Varsho. Maybe some others will. Again, when you talk about Dalton Varsho, there's a little bit of there's some negative aspects around him because there's still the trade, right? As people say, the Gurriel Moreno trade was an absolute fleecing for the Diamondbacks. I haven't really made a call on it right now. The way it looks right now, I think you can lean that way. But Dalton Varsho is still a young guy, still has a lot of career ahead of him. But let's stick with the arbitration. 7.7, the second highest Toronto Blue Jays arbitration. I see it being around there. I think it might go actually up a little bit more. I think Dalton Varsho might value himself a little bit higher than that. So I can see it being 8.5. But this is another one where I think if you're the Blue Jays, you don't really fight this one too much. If Dalton Varsho wants slightly more, I think you got to give it to him for what he's done with your organization.
Yeah, and I have to apologize. The second highest is actually Jordan Romano's at 7.75.
Close.
Whatever. Off by $50,000.
That matters. I took it for $50,000 right now. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, but we're also not pitching in the MLB or trying to hit a baseball or make diving catches or,
It's too bad we just broke our collarbone, or you broke your collarbone. I broke my leg. And just, it's tough. We could have been there just on the Blue Jays.
It's tough out here. You can't expect those injuries, right? No, but in saying that, no, I agree with you. Dalton Varsho's contract, I think that's totally fair. He gives you more than what Kevin Kiermaier did, and you paid Kevin Kiermaier a boatload. So you wear this one on the chin and you accept that 7.7 for sure. I guess moving into Jordan Romano, 7.75. This is a tough one. We didn't see a whole lot of Jordy last year. What are you thinking on this one?
The fans, I feel like, are going to say that, like, why is this guy even on the team? Which is so ridiculous. I'm not everyone, obviously, but I have seen some takes on Jordan Romano that are completely out of left field. He had one bad year after 4 years in a row where he was one of the best closers, a top 5 closer in baseball, maybe top 10. Again, there's arguments there, but he was an effective closer for your baseball team. Again, this is one that I see as fair. But I think what is going to be interesting is how much merit do they put in Jordan Romano's season in 2024? Or are they going to compare this more to 2022, 2023, where you do see the consistency? Or are you going to go with that more recency bias route? And, Jordan Romano wasn't that effective. He was injured. Do we want to pay him 7.75 or do we want to get him a little bit lower? With these contracts, with these arbitration contracts, these guys reach free agency. They're getting paid way more money than what they're getting paid in arbitration right now. So with Jordan Romano, again, 7.75 if he wants 8. I don't hate that. You probably keep Jordan Romano under 9.5 just due to his last season. If he had a great season again, I wouldn't have hated if he went to 10 or 11. But after last season, you do have to account for that a little bit. But I wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Romano also goes a little bit higher than his projected arbitration salary.
Yeah, and I think where people don't sometimes understand with Jordan Romano is obviously the lingering injury was a problem, and people don't see that, right? They see he was injured at the beginning. Oh, he was terrible and then got injured again. No, obviously this injury was lingering that they just didn't address and give him the time to heal. So now that they've done that, I'm fully expecting the 2022-2023 Jordan Romano back out there. And if it's not, then it's not, and there's the problem. But right now, I can't really take a whole lot away from him. I think that the team rushed him back in 2024 to try to make, when they were struggling, they tried to get him back as quickly as possible. And that turned out to be a huge mistake for this team. I think this is a fair number for Jordan Romano, to be honest with you.
You can't complain. Like, again, if this guy tests free agency, good thing for arbitration, because the Yankees, Dodgers would just be the greatest teams of all time, and the Oakland Athletics, teams like that, would literally just never have a chance to develop whatsoever. So I think arbitration with the MLB salary cap is a good thing. But yeah, with Jordan Romano, it's again, it's a reliever. It's going to be one of your most effective relievers. I'm hoping for, at least in 2025. That's what I'm going to be sticking with. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. And like you said, if it doesn't go well in 2025, he is a free agent. You can work on a contract. You don't have to pay him 12, 15, whatever million you want. If you want to try to get him on a more team-friendly deal, he's going to have the option to do that, or he's going to have the option to test free agency. So there's really no risk here is where I'm getting at. If you pay Jordan Romano an extra $2 million or $2 million less, does that really affect the Toronto Blue Jays payroll? When you have a payroll of $230 million, give or take, of what the Toronto Blue Jays do have, that $1 million to $2 million you void the Jordan Romano probably isn't going to matter too much.
No, I 100% agree. And I think we will get some pushback on this one. There is some Jordan Romano, I don't want to say haters, but not big fans of him for sure, that even are in our comment section. And we're happy to hear you guys out. I mean, if you have those takes, that's fine. But our point of it is obviously the lingering injury, and he was consistent the rest of his time with the Blue Jays. So there is an argument I understand from both ways, but that's just where I stand personally, Carter.
You want to do another argument piece? I know this isn't in the order that we were doing, but I think Eric Swanson is going to be a piece that a lot of people argue about as well. We'll get into Alejandro Kirk right after, who would be the actual next one up for the arbitration value. But Eric Swanson is another guy in that Jordan Romano spot. But the difference between these two players is that you did see Eric Swanson play the Eric Swanson caliber of baseball down the stretch in the last month and a half. So he is projected right now at $3.2 million. It's another guy. Would not be surprised if it is more than 3.2 million. I don't see it fluctuating too much. Like, I'm not saying he's going to go up to 6 million. I think he might get like 3.5. He might be a little bit of bartering just to up that value a little bit more. And I don't hate that again whatsoever. Eric Swanson was such a valuable piece to this bullpen in 2023. He was so good for the Mariners before that as well. It's half a year. You have Eric Swanson had one of the worst spring trainings of all time, considered just like family stuff, injuries, you name it. It couldn't really have gone much worse for Eric Swanson. The season didn't go great. He went back to AAA. Didn't really hear too much about him. Wasn't complaining whatsoever. Realized that he wasn't pitching effectively. Came back and was one of the better relievers on the Toronto Blue Jays bullpen, which isn't, I guess, saying much with how bad the bullpen was. But he will be an effective piece coming into 2025.
Yeah, this isn't a ridiculous number for me at all. I could see him even reaching a number like 3.75, even maybe 3.9 million in arbitration. And I think that's totally fair. He's, again, another guy that I really haven't lost a ton of faith in after that last season. I mean, like for a lot of guys, it really just wasn't the Blue Jays year. But I realistically think that a lot of these guys could have bounce back years. And I think Eric Swanson is a prime candidate for bounce back of the year. We'll have to wait and see. I think Bo Bichette, hopefully it's him that has that's bounce back player of the year, but we'll have to wait and see. I think
hopefully it's both. Hopefully it's a debate, and we have to really break it down to figure out who the winner is. We want them to both have good years, obviously, and two players that, if we were really going to break it down, number one, it's 1A, 1B. It's Eric Swanson and Bo Bichette for bounce back seasons. Maybe you throw, again, does Kevin Gausman have a bounce back season? That's debatable. Did he really have that bad of a season? Does it qualify? But those three players are going to have very good seasons. I'm looking forward to the 2025 season in that aspect. For me, other than Alejandro Kirk, this is kind of the last guy I really want to get into. The rest of them kind of just go over for me. But let's get right into Alejandro Kirk. $4.1 million is what he is projected at right now. This guy's going to be your starting catcher. They've kind of said already that they're not going to make a huge splash in free agency at the catcher position. It's just going to be, like we said on the podcast, probably a veteran backup, maybe a younger piece. It'll be a backup caliber catcher, though, at the end of the day. But Alejandro Kirk, $4.1 million. How do you feel about that?
To be honest with you, I think he probably could have gotten more. I don't think this is a steal either way. I think this is a pretty fair number. But I think at the end of the day, Alejandro Kirk, we could have seen him make, 5.5. Do I think that he's going to make 5.5 in arbitration? No, I think it's going to be pretty close to that 4.1, maybe 4.25. But I don't hate this deal at all either, to be honest with you. There's not a ton of really good catchers. And Alejandro Kirk is fantastic defensively behind the dish. And we even saw that towards the end of the season when he was throwing guys out. I mean, he's elevating his game, and that's exactly what the Toronto Blue Jays needed from him. And he's proved time and time again that he really does deserve that spot. And I just don't know who else you would go and get for that kind of price. I just don't see anybody in the league that there would be an option for.
Well, and that's exactly what it is. If you go out and you pay a guy like Yasmani Grandal, like a Gary Sanchez, I don't know, like you're going to probably pay them more than the Alejandro Kirk contract.
Yeah.
Like, it's unfortunate, but that's where we're at. And that's kind of why it doesn't really make a lot of sense to go out unless you're going to get one of these top 5 catchers that are available in the free agency market this season. There really isn't a catcher to get anyway. So your best case scenario is probably just running it back with Alejandro Kirk. And what he did in the second half of the season, if you can keep that up or even just around there, it doesn't have to be too much better. It doesn't have to be too much worse. If you can just be a consistent hitter and be productive somewhere in that 5, 6, 7 spot. For me, ideally, he's in the 6 or 7 spot. But with Alejandro Kirk, what he did in the back half of the season, we can see more of that. You definitely can't complain about these contracts. And that's the kind of reason why I don't want to break these down too much more, is because like we go over these contracts, like Ernie Clement, 1.7, Zach Pop, 1 million. That's going to be the only one I'm like, I don't know, this guy deserves 1 million. I don't know if this guy deserves anything. But like Dylan Tate, 1.9. That's one that I will break it down as well, because I know you want to get into that one. But Henny Cabrera, 2.5. Like, is anyone really going to argue that at all? Like, if you're getting a caliber guy like Henny Cabrera in the free agency, if you're getting a Henny Cabrera caliber guy, you look at Chad Green's contract. The Chad Green's contract around $10 million. Henny Cabrera, slightly worse, I'll say, but 8 million, 7 million. Like, you're getting a steal no matter what when you're re-signing Henry Cabrera with this arbitration deal. So that's why I'm not going to complain about Dalton Varsho getting 7.7, like Henry Cabrera getting 2.5, Eric Swanson getting 3.2. They get a little more, a little less. If we were going to free agency for these pieces, we're paying way more. So at the end of the day, with arbitration, for most players, it really doesn't matter if they go a little bit higher or lower. It's the players like Vladimir Guerrero Jr. It's those big players that you can have a little bit of bartering room for. So, Braden, to end this off, we have 10 players on the Toronto Blue Jays. Most of the time, in most scenarios, they do reach an arbitration deal. They don't have to go to the arbitration hearings. Out of these 10 players, is there anyone you see that is going to have to go to an arbitration hearing because they won't be able to figure it out?
Vladimir Guerrero Jr., for sure. He's going to go, because the numbers, it's such a big number that there's no way that they're going to come to an exact decision, and they will go. And hopefully it's just easy enough where maybe they can not get into it too heavily. Besides that, you're maybe looking at maybe Dalton Varsho, possibly. Besides that, Carter, that's all I really see. The Jordan Romano one's tough because he doesn't really have any leg to stand on after really not playing this past season. Eric Swanson, again, got sent down. I think there's a lot of room there, so I don't think he's going to argue it. The Henny Cabrera, I think he's just happy that he had a good season and hopefully looking to build on that, so I don't think he's going to argue a ton. Alek Manoah, obviously injured, so I don't think there's going to be too much of an argument there as well. So we'll have to wait and see. But I think it has to be Vlad for sure is the most likely, and then maybe a Dalton Varsho secondary.
Yeah, for me, it's just Vlad. And it's the same reasoning that I kind of went over. It's like in previous seasons, you always see that the smaller contract guys, they're just, again, happy to kind of be coming back, right? They're just happy to be playing baseball. Maybe there was a little bit of bartering, but again, with the organization, is Ernie Clement wanting 1.7 million or 1.9 million? Is that really going to break the bank of the Toronto Blue Jays? If Ernie Clement wants an extra $200,000, just give it to him. I think that's all kind of where they're at. For baseball, anything under 10 million doesn't really matter. Is that fair to say? So
yeah, really.
With Vladimir Guerrero Jr., yeah, you're right. It's 29.6 million. You saw last year they had to go. They're going to go again. It's unfortunate. I don't want them to go, but it's just in the cards. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. from last year, from what he kind of said, he did say, again, this relationships can be strained, but he seemed pretty positive at the end of it compared to Bo Bichette, where I know he had a little bit more negative things to say. So I think Vladimir Guerrero Jr., no matter what, it's not going to impact him too much. Again, he's said multiple times he wants to stay with the Blue Jays. With it, whether he gets paid an extra $2 million this year or $2 million last, he knows that he's going to get the bag in the future. So with this arbitration case, I think they're going to go, but I don't think there's going to be too many hard feelings with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. But who knows with this front office? It's hard to trust them in a lot of different aspects. So we just got to hope that nothing goes wrong a part of these arbitration hearings, especially with Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
Yeah, man. And that's all this is, really. It's just, I think the biggest part of arbitration is keeping those relationships. Other than that, I mean, the money's the money. It's a ton of money all the time that I don't necessarily know if, $500,000 here, $500,000 there really makes that big of a difference. So at the end of the day, we'll wait and see what happens. But in saying that, Carter, we got still the MLB postseason to get into, because holy moly, what a game between the Yankees and the Guardians. We got to sort of give you a little what our thoughts and feelings were just watching that game. We'll get into all of that coming up right after this quick break.
Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They are the easiest and most exciting way to play fantasy sports because it's just you against the numbers. Prize Picks is very simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entries in as little as 60 seconds. If you guys are fantasy people, which I am as well, I'm a big NFL fantasy guy, obviously a big NHL fantasy guy. For MLB, it's not really fantasy going on, unfortunately, so I'm going to keep it with the NHL and the NFL. So I have more than fantasy points. I had Javonte Williams in this Broncos game. For when we're recording this, it sounds like he's going to get it. And then I also have for the NHL, I just ran with fantasy. I have Owen Tippett more than fantasy points as well. I'm a big fantasy guy. Prize Picks is the perfect site to go to if you guys enjoy your fantasy as well. So if you know which players are going to perform on specific nights, this is a no-brainer. Download Prize Picks and start making your picks today. You can download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for first deposit matchup to $100. It's code Locked On MLB for first deposit matchup to $100. Prize Picks, run your game.
Carter, let's get into this Yankees Guardians game. Oh my goodness, what a match. That was such a fun game to watch. I mean, I hate the Yankees, and watching them lose is icing on the cake. The problem is it was a fun game to watch, which I hate to say. I mean, Carter, just going over it. I mean, Aaron Judge, he hits that home run to right field and scores Juan Soto as well. Then Stanton goes back to back with Aaron Judge, absolutely electric. And then the man of the hour, I can't remember how to say his first name, but Noel, the rookie for the Cleveland Guardians, hits that absolute blast in the ninth with 2 outs. Unbelievable, dude. And then David Fry, I mean, just pops off and finishes the game in extra innings. Unbelievable, man. It was a roller coaster game for sure.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to have to expose you with the betting a little bit. Braden had the Yankees to win by more than 2 runs, or 2 runs or more, I guess you could say. So it was kind of a little bit of a roller coaster for that too. He was, again, didn't want the Yankees to win, but was sort of happy that his bet won. I was just full on, just on the other side. I'm like, Braden, I don't want you to win any bets today. It's not going to happen. The Guardians need this game badly, and look what happened. Just unreal. And you said that it kind of sucked. It was a fun game to watch. I don't think so at all. I think it's awesome that it was a fun game to watch. I think it sucked that the Yankees kept battling back, and it looked like they were going to win for at least for the 8th inning only. But it was crazy game. Just again, I was kind of saying, we were talking off camera on the podcast or on the couch when we were watching the game. And it just comes down to the bullpen. The Yankees don't have a good bullpen. They got Luke Weaver. They had Tim Mesa pitching in the 7th inning. Like, who are we kidding? Like, we know how Tim Mesa is. Doesn't matter. He's their only lefty. I don't care. Tim Mesa, postseason, should not be thrown in the 7th inning. I haven't really been keeping up with Tim Mesa, at least with his postseason stats. Can't imagine they're that good, though. I'll fact check myself, though, as I give it back to you.
And you know what? A couple guys that need their props. Quan has been unbelievable. This postseason, I've absolutely loved what he's done. Also, Carter, I didn't even mention this. In the Dodgers game, Shohei Ohtani hits another home run in the 1st inning. That guy is unstoppable, dude.
And when we talk about bets again, that you had Shohei Ohtani, you were going to do Shohei Ohtani home run in that last game, Aaron Judge home run in this game. What a hit. Would have been a nice little parlay for Braden there. But I guess, I don't know, something in his head talked him out of it. Didn't end up cashing that one. But a little bit of a bad beat there. But overall, just one of the best games of the playoffs. Like when you had the Mets, Pete Alonso home run. That was an electric game. Other than that, though, like this was one of the best games I've watched all postseason. I think part of it is because the Guardians won, and that makes me a lot happier than seeing the Yankees win. And God forbid, if the Yankees would have won, I see it being a sweep. You had a sweep initially. I've said I think the Guardians are going to take 2 at least. I still have the Yankees winning. But let's make it a little bit of a series. Let's battle to the end here. Again, I'm a big Guardians guy, but at the end of the day, if they're willing to go anywhere, Colossi can't be giving up moonballs in the 8th inning.
No, that's crazy, man. I cannot believe that he gave those up. But I mean, it happens. It's just part of baseball, right?
It's Aaron Judge against Colossi. It's just one of the best matchups you could have in the entirety of the MLB.
Yeah, exactly. And that's baseball, right? Weirder things have happened. So it was the play. I can't remember what inning it was in. And the Guardians decide to try to throw the guy out at 3, gets in a rundown, and then the ball gets knocked loose and the runner's called safe. You know what I mean? That's just baseball. That is just how it goes. You make one decision and it could go horribly and switch the game around. Luckily enough, they came back and figured it all out anyway. But yeah, man, it's the MLB postseason.
I think that was the top of the ninth, the Jose Ramirez snow cone, which
Yeah.
both he just kind of, again, there was a little bit on Twitter. I was looking at some people like, oh, like you can't do that. You hit the ball of his glove, but obviously you get the replay and people are reacting right away. So it's just one of those plays that, it's crazy how the emotions are elevated in plays like that in MLB baseball. But yeah, just the amount of home runs to just change the game in this Cleveland Guardians Yankees game. Absolutely insane, especially getting it from Noel, the rookie on the Guardians. 2 outs. I know, meatball right down the middle, but I don't care. That pitch was absolutely sent to the moon. Love to see that off Luke Weaver.
Yeah, and he was batting 097 before that at bat, and then comes in clutch as a rookie too. Like, unbelievable. Like, that moment is going to live with him for the rest of his career. Like, what an absolute shot. So congratulations to them. Hopefully they can keep that series going. I don't know, Carter, anything else before we sort of duck out of here for the sort of weekend?
Yeah, I got 2 things. The first one is the Tim Meza update. So he finished the regular season with a 6.33 ERA. I knew it wasn't good. The postseason, he's pitched 1 1/3 innings. He's given up 2 hits. He doesn't have a run. I mean, good for Tim Meza. That's where we're at with that. Congrats to Tim Meza for not giving up a run in the dance. But the other thing was, I said we were going to bring up the Dylan Tate part of the arbitration projections. So we're just going to do that and then probably bounce out for this episode. So Dylan Tate at 1.9. I know you had a take on this one.
Yeah, for me, he's had one good season. I don't really know what his worth is. And 1.9 just seems high to me. I don't necessarily love to say that to a lot of guys, but for a guy that the Blue Jays really don't know and don't know what kind of stuff he's going to bring, did not play in 2023. I just don't know where I sit with that. I think that that's a high number, and maybe it's not a hot take. Maybe it is, but to me, it just, I don't know. It's a little bit questionable.
Yeah, I'm just going to go over, again, briefly, season stats. 4.66 ERA over 36.2 innings, 27 strikeouts, 1.47 whip. This guy's 30 years old, a former first-round pick. Does have some decent stuff. So, again, I don't hate that he's being brought back. And when we talk about these arbitration deals, if we want a guy with a 4.6 ERA in free agency, probably paying $6 million for a guy like that. So if you're getting Dylan Tate with what he did, again, there's upside here. Again, former first round pick, has very good stuff, does struggle with command, and then obviously has been DFA'd a lot this last season. So it's one of those things for me. It's I can't really get mad about it, right? It's
No,
1.9 million.
Yeah, and I'm not really. I'm not really upset. I think it was more so just one that like caught my eye. I'm like, oh, that seems a little high. It wasn't like this is a terrible arbitration. Like if he signs for, if the arbitration goes through at 1.9, it goes through. It doesn't affect my day one way or another. It was just one that caught my eye. When you look through arbitration, you sort of go down the list. You're like, yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, sure. Okay, whatever. This one was like, oh, okay. It just sort of threw me for a little bit of it's the one that I take a second look at, I guess is what I'll say. But overall, either way, if they bring him in and he does great, he does great. Again, for a lot of these bullpen guys, you're just looking for diamonds in the rough anyway. So maybe he's that type of guy. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and you're bringing guys on minor league deals. It's just under $1 million anyway. So you're paying an extra $1 million to take a chance on a guy that's, again, has had some good moments in his MLB career. Hasn't really put it together consistently. But if you're taking shots on a bullpen, I think you can't really get mad about it. And like you said, if they go lower, they go higher. It's not really going to end up being a big problem. But for me, I think he actually might go a little bit higher. I'm on the opposite end of you. Again, it's not going to be crazy. It's not going to be 3 million, 2 million, whatever. Might be 2.5. That's what I got for Dylan Tate. And it's the same argument that I had for all of these other, especially bullpen arms. You're going to be paying more for probably a worse guy in free agency than you're going to get with Dylan Tate anyway. For a bullpen that's that bad, I don't hate taking a shot on an first round pick. But yeah, that's I guess we'll head into the weekend. Again, likes, comments, subscriptions. A little bit of a downtime in MLB baseball. Not as much for obviously the league, but for the Toronto Blue Jays. So we do appreciate you guys coming back, tuning into the episodes, and hanging out with us 5 times a week. We have noticed 68% of you guys are not subscribed. So if you guys are coming back, watching our episodes, helps us out a ton. Also keeps our podcast at the top of your page. But other than that, Braden, I don't got much for this episode again, or for the rest of this episode. We got some plans for next weekend. Trade deadline will commence as well. We'll probably talk about the MLB just generically, just about like expectations, how the Jays did, how other teams in the AL East did, things like that. But Braden, you got anything else to add for this episode before we take off for the weekend?
The last thing, we always appreciate you guys tuning in and making us your first listen. If you want to make somebody your second listen, go check out Locked On MLB with host Paul Sullivan. Sully, I always said he's our guy. It's great. It's a great show, and it's fun to listen to, fun to watch. he talks about sort of the MLB as a whole and the big storylines going on. So make sure you guys
he'll definitely be
check that
breaking
out.
down that Guardians and Yankees game. We'll tell you that for free.
And you know what? He always puts on sort of a nice, fun show, too. So he's going to have his little tidbits in there. It's going to be really good. So make sure you guys go check out Locked On MLB with host Paul Sullivan. Sully. As always, guys, appreciate it. And we'll see you back on Monday.